Whew, praise the Lord. All right, folks, we might open our Bibles, if we could please, to 1 Samuel and chapter 25. This afternoon I just wanted to talk about the pursuit of peace, and those watching at home won't be able to see the slides that are coming up, but for those that are here, by way of explanation, they are not really pertinent to the talk this evening. Just got asked to do some slides, so I thought I'd put some together and they'll flash through as we give the word tonight. But to just talk about peace, really, and there's so many studies that have been conducted about the pursuit of happiness, about what someone would need to be happy, and a lot of the things on there are what you would expect. There's money, there's family, there's relationships, job satisfaction, but really, like, looking at various studies, sort of money always seemed to be number one, which I found pretty interesting. But the second one on the list was always peace, and for me, I found that quite fascinating in itself. That peace would be something that people would find to make themselves happy, and people live their whole lives striving and trying to obtain peace. And you might look at that like peace is just a quiet place where you can be alone in your thoughts. If you've got a young family, where a room where your kids aren't there, or if you work in a busy sort of open planned work environment, or a busy factory where there's no machines, there's no people on the phones, and just a moment of solitude. But when it's in these surveys and stuff, it's talking about peace. It's talking about this inward quiet peace within, a satisfaction, a place where you find a rest, and in our case, I find a rest for our soul. And a lot of people will search their whole life trying to find peace, and will never find it. People can obtain wealth, they can be part of a large loving family, have oodles and oodles of children and grandchildren, but can still not find a peace, a quiet place of belonging, not find that the tranquility of mind or of their soul. And just in Matthew chapter 9, Matthew chapter 5, and we won't go there, it says that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Don't worry about the scriptures on the screen, just keep the slides rolling. We're going to spend basically all of today in Samuel 25. So the peacemaker is someone or a people that loves to make peace and that loves people. So it's quite explanatory in the word there, and in the Bible commentary, it actually describes this word, the peacemaker, as people that are happy, they love and desire and delight in peace, and study to be quiet. They keep the peace that it be not broken, and recover it when it is broken. If the peacemakers are blessed, woe to the peace breakers. And we might start now in 1 Samuel 25 and verse 3. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and of beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep. And David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, Get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both to thee, and peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. And now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find favour in thine eyes, for we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hand, unto thy servants and to thy son David. So what we've got here is we've got King David has sent out, has sent out some of his men to go to Nabal, and they'd, at the time, what had happened is previously Nabal's shepherds had come and they'd stayed with David's people. They'd been looked after, they'd been fed, they'd been clothed, they'd been protected. And we can read, you can read sort of. In another translation, it was like they provided a wall around, the people of Nabal so that they wouldn't be harmed. And so David has come and has sent messages to Nabal and to say, we looked after you when your people dwelt amongst us, and they're looking to have that returned in kind. And it describes Abigail is there as someone who was intelligent and beautiful in appearance, whereas Nabal was described as someone who was evil and harsh in his dealings. And David asked that his servants would find favour in the sight of Nabal. And we just read on again in verse 10 and the same chapter. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and I give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? So David's young men turned their way and went again and came and told him these things. And then we just read the next verse there. And David said unto his men, Gird ye on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword. And David also girded on his sword. And where went up David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. And so Nabal, he feigns this ignorance here. And if we look at the life of David up to this point, this is the shepherd boy who was called out of the paddock and was anointed to be king over Israel, that was chosen by the Most High God to lead his people. This was David, the boy that stood before Goliath and slew him, with the stone, and the ignorance and the disrespect of Nabal of who is this David? I don't know who he is. The disrespect and the wanting to ignore a plea of help, to wanting to ignore someone asking to come and to be cared for and to be looked after. But also the reaction of David, and we know in the scriptures that David was a man of war, but the first reaction when he heard this was, men, grab your swords. Let's get ready for battle here, that this person has disrespected me. No, let us then march on. And we can think about life and everything that you and I face, and that there are times where maybe we have helped others or have tried to help others and have done that, and then there's a time where we need something or we ask for help, and we go to those people and nothing comes back, and how angry and how grieved we can feel in our souls, how grieved we can feel in our hearts that we've put ourselves out there and we've helped and we've tried to care and to support other people, but then nothing comes our way, and the chest puffs out, the storm clouds come over the head, and all of a sudden and all of a sudden, all you see is red. It's like the cartoons where you've got the red rag and you appear before a bull, and the bull's eyes, they start turning in the back of its head, and it just charges. And this was sort of the way David was at this point in time, was that he cared for Nabal's people, and at a moment where they asked for help, there was nothing coming back. But we continue on in verse 14, and we enter into the story, Abigail, and one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on them. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. And they were a wall unto us both by night and day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household. For he is such a son of Belial, for a man cannot speak to him." And one of the servants of Nabal goes to Abigail and says, evil is coming upon us. This force is coming upon us that's not going to spare the house of Nabal or any of his servants or any of the people. But he also talks about the conduct and the testimony of David's people, that when they were there, that they were looked after, that they were protected, they were fed, anything they lacked, anything they needed was given to them. And all that was required was that when they were working together in the fields, when they were working together, in the paddock, that they conversed, that they had a relationship, that they spent time together, and we're coming to Abigail here, and I don't know what was gained. I mean, we know early on it talked about that she was intelligent, that she was a beautiful woman, and I read out of a study Bible as well, and it talks about that she was someone who had great wisdom and was intelligent and made good decisions. And Nabal being referred to the son of Belial, which was someone who was wicked, who was worthless. Nabal's name means was foolish, and it was used to describe a person who was devoid of ethical standards, of spiritual sensitivity, and he was really not a great guy. So you've got this leader who thinks only of himself, makes poor decisions, and then you've got his wife, this beautiful woman who was intelligent, who was kind, and we read on about what Abigail, the peacemaker here, does in verse 18, and we'll read a fair chunk here. But then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. And she said unto her servants, "Go on before me. Behold, I come after you." But she told not her husband Nabal. So she's prepared all of this stuff for David and the people, and sent them on ahead. She follows behind and sort of leaves her husband out of the picture. And it was so that as she rode on the ass, and as she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him, and he has requited me evil for good. And so and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave all that pertain to him by the morning light, and any that pisseth against the wall." And when Abigail saw David, she hastened and lightened off the ass, and fell down before David on the face, and bowed herself to the ground. And she fell at his feet and said, "Upon me, my Lord, upon me, let this iniquity be." And let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord has withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal, be as folly. And now this blessing which thine handmaid has brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord. And evil has not been found in thee all thy days, yet a man is risen to pursue thee and to seek thy soul. But the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord has done to my Lord according to the good that he has spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel. And this shall no grief unto thee, nor offence of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. Abigail comes not just with physical gifts to sustain, to provide for David and those that were with him, but comes with just this incredible humility. She comes to bear, if it were like, the sins of the household of her husband, to take the bad that he had given to David, and to put it upon herself. She bows before his feet, and she worships him and seeks forgiveness. She recognizes the folly, the lack of wisdom, or the lack of integrity of her husband, and the way he is, the way he rules, and recognizes that David is this man of God, that God's blessing is upon him, and that the blessing will be there because he fights the battles of the Lord. And I find this just this incredible parting of the sea here, if you like, that Abigail just comes in, and it doesn't matter. David was ready for war. He was marching with the troops, swords and shields, and he was probably the best. He was pretty angry. He was about the response that he got from Nabal, and was ready to spill blood, but without regard for her own life, without regard for her own circumstance, Abigail takes it upon herself to just restore peace, to just do whatever she can to make things right there. And David then he responds in kind, and he thanks Abigail for her actions, and Abigail ends up going back to her household, going back to Nabal. Nabal gets drunk, suspected he has a stroke, and later he dies. And then after his death, in a period of time, David then ends up marrying Abigail, and it got me thinking when I was just reading through this story that there's sort of three examples, and we could read a heap more on this, but we won't, because we've got Nabal, who was someone who ignored the promises of God. He ignored the anointing of God. To say that he hadn't heard of David, the son of Jesse, I find that pretty hard to believe. I know I was talking with someone in the break, and we're talking about phones and connectivity and stuff like that, but I found it pretty hard that this boy who was anointed in the fields and slew Goliath wasn't known throughout the land, that his fame hadn't stretched to the wherevers of the land. But he he was harsh and he was evil in his dealings, that he wasn't an honest person. And how many other people can we see like that today in the world today? How many people can we see, whether it's in business dealings, workplace, for those of us that are at school or university, that we come across people who are just out for themselves, who are just focused on me, and will do whatever they can to get there, to get what they need out of life. And then we think of, David is loved in the scriptures, but he also has some howlers. He has some huge mistakes. And and at this point, when something didn't go David's way, David, the man of war, comes out. He was wroth, he was angry. His first thought was for revenge. His first thought was for blood, that we will go out and we will just get them, we will attack them. And in my previous life, I was like that. When things didn't go my way, or someone looked at me the wrong way, I was out for blood, and I wouldn't have been, and I wasn't satisfied until I got it. And then we see Abigail. Maybe it was because she's the woman of the story, and the other two were blokes. I don't know, but Abigail became the peacemaker. She became the one that when she heard what was happening, or what had happened between her husband Nabal, of David, and of the report of Nabal's servants, that she got involved, and she did whatever she could to restore the peace. She, almost like the good Samaritan that wasn't satisfied with sort of, just stopping and talking to the person on the side of the road, but cared for them, dressed their wounds, poured in the oil and the wine, was prepared to put them somewhere to stay, to give them some accommodation and whatnot. And what we see is that, Abigail, her first thought was of peace, and was of a restoration, and regardless of any consequences, was to soothe the waters, and it pleased God. She recognised the calling of the Lord, and recognised what she needed to do, and life can be pretty heavy, topsy-turvy. We can think of all the sort of words to describe it, disjointed, chaotic, stressful, worrisome. And a lot of times we have no idea. It doesn't matter how old we get or how much experience we gather. A lot of times situations happen that we just don't know how to deal with, because as we gain experience and we feel like we gain wisdom, sometimes, it changes. And every time we think we're on top of something, we can just get knocked back a peg or two, and we experience anxieties and worry and stress and the like. And we look at the world we live in today, and what does life want from us? In Luke 21, we read that men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after these things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. That men's hearts would fail them for fear. And it's probably been polarised even more in this sort of current time we've experienced over the last couple of years. But we see the signs all around us. And just focusing on, what does the world want? I'm part of a survey, and I have been for probably, I reckon, half my life. I've been involved in this survey that's done around Australia. Kind of got in under the mother-son rule. My mum did it, and then because I lived in the household, it came to me. It's called the Living in Australia survey, and they sort of interview I think there's about 200,000 people around Australia that do it every year now. They give me a bit of money for doing it, and but it talks about life satisfaction. It talks about how happy and satisfied are you with the amount of money you earn, the home you live in, your family situation, the chores you do around the house, sort of every aspect of your personal life. And every year afterwards, they send me a pack once they're ready to sort of publish their findings and it's from everyone around Australia, a variety of people, lifestyle backgrounds, and stuff like that. And they publish some pretty interesting stuff based on, real conversations with real people. There's one you do face to face with the examiner, and then there's one you do privately, because there's obviously sometimes there's stuff that you might not want to speak about sort of face to face with them. And and just thinking about peace tonight, and I guess pursuing peace, that mental health at the moment's increased by 30% in the last 2 years, and that's an incredible thing. You think about just Australia, and these are random people across the country. That mental health has increased by 30%. We see this mentality of keeping up with the Joneses has become more and more and more, that and the idea of that is that I need to have more. I need to have what my neighbour has, and then when I've got what my neighbour has, I need to get more. I need to find more. I need to make sure that I have the biggest, I have the best, regardless of the consequences, and I won't be satisfied until I've got that. We look at being captive or being held captive, and it's a state where we find ourselves confined to a particular space, and we're unable to escape, and that people feel that they've become captives in their own relationships, in their own life circumstances, that maybe they started off on this journey and they were happy and they were fulfilled, but now that they've found themselves captive, they're unable to escape the life that they've got. It's not peaceful, but it's a head bang. It's worrisome. It's a horrendous state of being. And we look at where we belong in society as far as the social hierarchy. That a person's that we have to hold a certain position in the workforce, or through education, our income, or our wealth, before we feel a sense of belonging, or before we feel like we can be content with what we've got, or what we rest. This is the pressures that real people are feeling in the world today, and it's not like that. And we look around the world, and we here tonight, and what we're watching online, Bible believing people, that we recognise that there are signs around the world. There are wars, and there are rumours of wars. There's earthquakes and all this natural stuff that's going on that we can see, and prophecy and stuff that we can relate back to the Word of God and to the coming of Jesus Christ. But a lot of these people are people that don't have, and I'll assume this, a relationship with Jesus Christ. These are just, everyday people that live in Morfett Vale and Glenelg and Elizabeth and wherever, Queensland, hats off to them. It'd be a nice place to be. But these are people that live life and have worries and have problems, and like all of us do. But the thing is that here there's a rest for our soul. Here there is a hope for the future. And for you and I, it's a great place to look for our hope and to rely on our hope. But for a lot of people out there, Luke 21, men's hearts failing themselves for fear. There is a fear in their soul. There is a lack of hope in their soul, uncertainty. There is no peace. There is just turmoil day by day. And we might turn, if we could please, to Matthew chapter 11, just as we're winding down, and maybe while we're going there, we read in Psalm 34 and verse 13, to depart from evil and do good, to seek peace and to pursue it. Excellent words written there by King David, and to depart from evil, to do good, to seek peace and to pursue it. Then in John 14:27 we read, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Amazing comfort that you and I can experience, this comfort through the Holy Ghost. And Jesus writes in Matthew 11, and we'll start in verse 28, to come unto me, all you that labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If we think about pursuing peace, what is that right there that Jesus Christ says? Come unto me, all you that labour and are heavy laden. Come unto me, all you that struggle. Come unto me, all you that don't have peace. Come unto me, all you that have a need, and you shall find a rest for your souls, that I shall find a rest for my soul. This is the promise that's been given to you and I. This is the promise that's been given to as many that are out there that would hear the word of the Lord. It's something that God can provide to you and to I and to anyone. And in a moment we're going to have a time of prayer, but if you are sort of online today and you're watching on or you're here in the auditorium, there is a rest for your soul today. We have a baptism tank here at Woodcroft behind the curtains, and you can enter into a relationship with God. Your life can be changed. You can, whether you've lived a foolish life like Nabal, whether you've lived a life of war and turmoil, like David demonstrated, today you can find a rest. Today you can find a home. Today you can find a peace. And all the people said, Amen.